Hi everyone, delonewolf here and welcome back to EVE Talk, your weekly look at the market in EVE Online. Not a lot of EVE news this week, but we did get a new EVE pulse with CCP Antiquarian that was decently interesting because he did mention that they might or will probably announce new features in EVE Pulse as well, although not all of them will be that easily found. I think that they might have some weird plans with in-game events and things like that as well. So that's like a little bit of a tidbit that is pretty interesting. And next to that, I think people went looking on a CC and found some strange implants that would increase scram range. That's kind of a weird one. And then that there's a new event coming, which apparently other asteroids on the menu as well, which probably means, I mean, most people do speculate that it probably means that you'll have to mine in order to then produce the skill point boosters, which, well, personally, I don't really agree with that. It feels so good and so rewarding to get some skill point boost drops from just running the event that I don't really agree with that design decision so far, to put those behind a wall of industry and mining as well. I mean, I understand that it'll make them more valuable, and it means that those players that do enjoy that type of activity, that only enjoy that type of activity, have a reason to join in on these events. But overall, I just felt like it was such a smoother ride through the events before that yeah, it makes little sense for me to put the best rewards of these events behind like a mining wall. You know, just make something else, give us another sidetrack for miners and industry, rather than the most important item, I think, for most players that do these events. But well, we'll see how all of that develops, of course, as CCP develops their plans, comes out with more news, and then everything eventually hits CC and TQ, of course. Next up, we'll take a quick look at the new Eden store. Not a lot of new stuff here, but of course the Ishtar police skin. You guys know that I bought it. It just looks so great. Can't do without it, I think, if you like to fly the Ishtar. That one looks absolutely amazing. Nyx police skin, I think, is going to be pretty popular as well. Next to that, we've got lots of classics. Confessor Lava Core skin, I do like that. And the Avatar one as well look absolutely amazing. If you go down a little bit more, you do have some cheaper skins here for the Ghostbird skins, if you like white Kaldari ships, which I think is a pretty cool look myself. Then those are decently affordable. And then I saw something else down here as well. Let's see if I can spot it. Actually, I saw a couple of things. Is it? Yeah, right here. I must say, Men's Empyrean Dragon Jacket, I think that does look pretty cool. I really do. Not for me. I mean, apparel, I don't really like to spend Plex on that, but I have to admit that it does look really cool. And then down here there was still a skin. Yeah, you still have more lava cores. I do think that they look very cool. Yep, basically that's it. Ooh, and then of course down here you also still have the Angel Hex skins if you're interested in those. Those are definitely some of the best looking skins in the game as well. So let's move on to the market itself, of course. That's why everyone is here. We'll start with some Plex and stuff at 340. Like that, and let's take a look at Plex. You may already have seen from the ticker that we are hesitating a little bit in Jita 4.4. We're talking 3,587,000 Plex, down a little bit from last week. In the player owned trade hubs, 3,473,000, and then the buyers are at 3,428,000. So very narrow margin in the player-owned trade hubs, and actually still a decent margin between the player-owned trade hubs and GTA 4.4 when it comes to selling Plex. On the price history, we went up to that 3.5 million almost. We never really reached it, and now we are basically hesitating in the last couple of days to actually go through that ceiling. I'm not sure if we'll manage to do so. On the other hand, pretty obvious here. Pretty close to 1 year high point for Plex, and a great time to try and sell them, especially in Jita, if you have that patience and if you want to try to eke out a little bit more for your seller. You could try above 3.5 million very easily, I think, in Jita 4.4. Costs you a little bit more tax, I think, but you know, that's up to you to decide which is a trade that you want to do. Next up, we have the multiple pilot train certificate. Same thing, right? very nice increase in price to 1-year high point, and then at the tail end here get a little bit of hesitation. 1.6 billion pretty much, one above that for the sellers in JITA, and then we do have someone selling 94 of them for 1,560,000,000 ISK. Buyers coming in at just below 1.5 billion ISK, which is right here on the chart. Quite expensive, of course, compared to the rest of the year, but until, you know, you gotta remember all of these massive downtrends here, CCP sales that did give skill point farmers quite a nice time right there, nice margins. So next up we've got the skill extractors. We'll take a quick look at that. Again, last 3 days you can see the hesitation in the market to go even higher after reaching a 1-year high point, almost 400 million ISK. 391 for the sellers. In JITA, practically 400 million in JITA, and then 381 million for the buyers. Quite expensive, of course, and that is at the moment going to cut into any margins for skill points and skill injectors, of course. So let's take a look at that. Should be going back up. Yep. Actually had a nice movement up here in January because of the gifts that CCP introduced into the game. You had this special booster that allowed you to take large skill injectors without the drawbacks, no matter how many skill points you had. That really increased demand quite a lot all of a sudden, to above 850 million ISK. But now after that correction, we're basically back at that 1-year high point, selling at the moment for 862 million ISK. You can also try to sell them for 880 million ISK in JITA for 4, and then the buyers of that are up to 846 million ISK pretty much. That is quite expensive. Yeah, very close to that 850, above pretty much the whole of the last year. And basically what we should have seen, what we would naturally have seen, is an increase in price from this point up to this point, except that that strange gift from CCP did increase the movement a little bit, caused a bit of a decline when that was over, but now we're back on the general trend, which is normal. If you look at skill extractors, of course, that is quite expensive. If you look at the multiple pirate trading certificates as well, that is quite expensive. So we are obviously at a 1-year high point as well for large skill injectors. If you made your right investments here, this is, I think, a great time to sell. Small skill injectors next, same thing, up to that 1-year high point again as well. Bit of hesitation at the tail end, but we're not talking a massive drawback, staying well above 170 on the chart. 175 million for the sellers, 178 in JITA, that's a little bit more reasonable, and then 165 million is for the buyers of small skill injectors. Very expensive at the moment for new players and alpha clones. The daily alpha injectors are also racing back towards their average price, getting back to 55 million almost, after again massive CCP sale, obviously increased volumes here, so much more that it'll take a little bit of time to absorb that decrease in price here, but we're doing so decently quickly. Currently selling for almost 55 million ISK and 51 billion ISK for the buyers. If you can, if you bought here at the right time, let's say below 40 million ISK, I personally would still have a little bit of patience. I do think that we can get closer to 60 million ISK. Looking at the upwards pressure on everything else, there should be a lot of demand for daily alpha injectors, but you are already looking at a pretty nice trade. Bought for 40, selling for almost 55 does sound pretty decent as well. Next up, we have the minerals coming in at 850. Like that. As always, we'll start with titanium, which is dipping down. Now this is today's average so far, so this is bound to be a little bit of a mess up from the chart, but you can clearly tell that we are getting closer and closer to that 4.5 ISK on the 5-day moving average as well, which is the blue line. And sellers, let's actually put, I mean, this is also in perimeter 441, but JITA does still dominate the trades by a large margin when it comes to the volumes of minerals. So 451 for the sellers, and then the first buyer coming in here at 446, and then 429, definitely trying to drive that price down to less than 4.5 ISK. There's lots of pressure, and despite all of that, we still see 2 billion here, 2 billion here, a billion here, a billion here, all of that driving the price of titanium down by quite a bit. So at this point, I'm basically speculating that yeah, it's so calm in general that oversupply is becoming a real thing here as well, and even the difficulty of moving titanium is no longer a stopgap. This price is going down. That ought to be bad news for pyrite, and it is. It managed a little bit of a climb back to above 3.5 ISK, but you can clearly tell that in the last week we have been under pressure heading back towards that price range. 371 for the sellers, 358 for the buyers. After that we have Mexalon that actually climbed back up a little bit. That is interesting. Might be nullsec related. I do know that it's, or I'm pretty sure that it still holds up, that Mexalon is the first bottleneck in nullsec. We know that if you're just doing general industry now, that titanium is something that you need a lot of and needs lots of cubic meters in order to transport it. But Mexalon is the one thing that is not so easily mined in enough quantities in nullsec. So here we see this increased price back above 60 ISK, currently selling for just above 60 ISK, bars coming in at 56.6 though, so that will be decently short-lived. I think it's normal after we reach a 1-year low and stay there for a little bit. The market does tend to overreact on a sell opportunity, so I think that this will get squashed quite quickly by lots of stocks from other people. Unfortunately, still not looking great for Mexalon. And then Isogen, that has been on a slow increase in price after breaking through the 15 ISK barrier on the downside, is now also at the tail end here in the last 5-7 days. You can clearly see that we are hesitating as well. 5-day moving average making that little dip down there. Selling for 17 ISK, buyers coming in at just below 17 ISK. Then we've got Noxium. That's, I would say, good news. If you look at this from a full 1-year perspective, we're still holding on to 300 ISK, and we actually went back above that. Against my expectation, I really thought that once that is broken, the market would start to move into 75 to the 300 range, but nope, sellers still at 303, buyers at 285. Noxium still doing quite decently, I must say, compared to most of the others for the year. Then we have Zydrine that also worked its way back up to 600 ISK. That doesn't last, of course, forever, such an increase in price, and we're now basically settling above 500. 538 for the sellers, 502 ISK for the buyers. And then for Megasite we have a very similar chart, except that the increased price is now remaining where it is. 557 for the sellers and 508 for the buyers. And then finally, on the Morphite front, we try to get back to 8,000 ISK, so we get this slow up increase in price as well towards 8,000 ISK for Morphite, which is sellers are practically at 8,000 ISK, buyers are still at 7,600 ISK. If you look at this from the entire 1-year perspective, this is still a great time to try and grab some Morphite below 8,000 ISK, in my opinion. It's for the longer term. You never know how long it can take for this to come back, but I do think it's a good purchase. Next up, we have our PI coming in at 1305. Like that. Let's see what's happening here. I honestly haven't kept up too much with the PI business, doing some industry myself. Actually, I haven't even looked at my plans too much except start the extractor. So here we have the broadcast notes. You can see in the first half of the year 2.2 million on average and hovering between that. Now we are talking about 2 to 2.1 million, and in the last couple of days we're basically looking like the average prices. It basically looks like the average prices went back down towards 2 million. So definitely at the lower end, still 2.1 million for the sellers, but less than 2 million for the buyers. Still obviously trading below average at the moment. Construction blocks, ooh, that is nice and very interesting for me. You might, let's see if I still have that on the ticker. Construction blocks, I bought a batch of that for less than 10,000 ISK, and now finally we have a bit of a move up here, and we even have a couple of data points at 13,000 ISK. So we are talking sellers 12,800 ISK, buyers up to almost 11,000 ISK. That's a nice little comeback. And yeah, if you, like me, bought for less than 10,000 ISK, you can now sell for, let's say, 12,500 very comfortably. That's about is that a quarter, so 25% profit to be taken pretty easily. The choice that you then need to make is this the time already to make the trade, or are you really going to wait for a more pronounced increase in price? For me, maybe construction blocks. I've actually held on to that for a decent amount of time. Might be time to take those profits. Consumer electronics next. Also, I tried to, let's take a quick look here at the ticker as well. Consumer electronics bought for 10,700 discs, so obviously below 11k. Look at that nice comeback up to 13,000 discs as well. For the sellers, 12,000 discs for the buyers. Still a bit shy for me on this one. You can see that 14k should be very doable, and then up to 15,000 discs, 16,000 discs if you're very lucky. So this one I'm actually going to maintain a little bit longer. That dip was much more pronounced, much more recent as well, and so that's still looking like a very good purchase with a sell opportunity, but here I personally do think I'll be a bit more patient. For coolants next, that is very surprising, although I must say there is something that keeps giving that little inkling, and that is of course nitrogen fuel on the ticker that is slowly going up as well. Went to like close to 19,000 discs, is now slowly working its way back to, I would say, an average 20,000 discs. Still a very reasonable price, but you can clearly tell, I think, that the PI prices are starting to have an effect there. Coolants, yet again, 1 year high point, data points up to 13,000 disc here. Sellers, practically 13,000 disc, buyers 12,275. Still very expensive, and yeah, a little bit of a comeback here as well. So very interesting to see yet another push up. Enriched uranium, after dipping to 12,000 disc, is back to 14k. Yep, sellers 14,200, buyers 13,200. Nice little comeback as well. So it looks like this was a fake out. 2 dips lower and lower. It really looked like we were going to start to normalize towards 12,000 disc, but nope, nice little comeback here for enriched uranium as well. Integrity response drones, so it's now, you should see this as basically 3 categories. Advanced PI materials tied to structure construction seems to be below average. A little bit of a comeback in the general PI materials, and then fuel related materials still very expensive, because these here integrity response drones not managing to break above 2.5 million, which was its average, selling just below that, buyers at 2.2 million. Still a nice margin between the two here. Mechanical parts for fuels was also breaking down a little bit, heading back for an average 10,000 disc, which is still okay, an average price. But look at that nice little comeback here in price as well, up towards 12,000 disc again, 12,000 for the sellers, almost 11,000 for the buyers. So fuel PI again up there with the higher prices. Nuclear reactors, that is nice as well. Investment on that, do I still have it? Nuclear reactors bought for 87.5 thousand discs, so obviously below the 90,000 disc threshold. And finally we get a little bit of a comeback, 110,000 discs for the sellers, 102 for the buyers. It's been a long time since we've had buyers above 100,000 disc. This is obviously, if you're also tired of that investment, because I bought it quite a while ago, I think here, or maybe even here, I think I'm actually holding on to that for since the summer, then you can definitely sell now. We're obviously at the smaller peaks highs here with 110,000 disc for the sellers. Very nice here as well. Organic mortar applicators next, advanced PI, so tied to structures, again same thing, right? 1.1 million should be doable, but we're obviously staying below that for the first seller. Most of them are around that price though, gotta be honest. Sellers 1.1 million is around average, but very close to 1 million for the buyers as well. Robotics is tied to fuels, but apparently because it's a specialized planetary material, it's a little bit different on this one. So let's see here, 100,000 disc on average, even a little bit below that at the moment. 98,000 for the sellers, 93,000 for the buyers. So robotics is still below average, quite high volumes in the last couple of days here as well. Self-harmonizing power cores, advanced PI as well. You can see that we come from a period of well below average prices. We're back basically to 2.1 million. So on average, yeah, 2.15 for the sellers, a bit less than 2 million for the buyers. Though those buyers really are trying to keep these advanced PI materials low. Here, in this case, sellers have brought the price back to average. Superconductors, very nice little breakout as well. We went, man, this is where you could do some trading, right? You can probably buy close to 11,000 disc on several occasions, and now here We are currently selling that for 13,600 ISK, buyers at 12,800. Nice volatility in superconductors. Personally, I don't trade in that because I produce this. So I just try to time my PI selling at the right time, which, well, is right now. I should definitely empty out my planets and bring that to the market, because it's fuels and it's superconductors. Then we've got test cultures up to 9,000 ISK, which I would say is the average price, 9.2, 9,200 ISK for the sellers and almost 9,000 ISK for the buyers. Definitely out of the hole here, out of that buy opportunity. And then we have the wetware mainframes, which again, advanced PI, same pattern, obviously a little bit below average at the moment. Less than 2.3 million for the sellers and very narrow margin here, actually 2.25 million pretty much for the buyer. So PI is definitely this mixed picture, and I would say if you're looking for a long-term investment, then the advanced PI materials do offer some options, because of course all you need is CCP to announce a new set of structures that's large enough to have a big impact on the need for advanced PI materials, that you'll be looking at a very good investment. And most of the others are actually up in price, high in price, indicating that it's a good time to be producing PI and bringing it to the market. Next up, advanced moon materials. I don't think I'm gonna keep the ticker open. We might actually take a closer look at that a little bit later down the road. Let's start with advanced moon materials coming in at 21 minutes. Like that. As always, a crystalline carbonite first. Yeah, flat, not at the bottom, not a nice peak for a good trade. So here again, that is the same story as last week for me. I'm not really willing to touch that. Ferrite carbide is up a little bit, but again, you can see that 200 ISK should be possible on the sellers. We're talking 178 right now, 169 for the buyers. Yeah, nowhere near the bottom either. So this is too much of an in-between story yet again. Then we have titanium carbide. That is up to 200 ISK. Low point is 150. You know, if you bought here for the 150 and you're selling at 200, which at the moment you're practically on the seller price, that's okay. 185 for the buyers though. That is nowhere near the right price to be jumping on some titanium carbide. Tungsten carbide was doing quite nice here though, so dipping below 175 a couple of times. Very nice, then up to 225, and now is basically, unfortunately, yet again going back down to that in-between price of around 200 ISK here for tungsten carbide. 203 for the sellers, 192 for the buyers. That's again a little bit of a no. You need to look for 170, something like that on buyers, before you can jump in on some tungsten carbide. And of course, selling, well, as close to 250 as possible makes a lot of sense to me. So yeah, at the moment, lots of these are basically hovering on the average price. I think it's normal. In nullsec, things tend to be decently stable and quiet. And I think in highsec, we still have lots of moon mining happening, bringing, I'm not sure if we're actually bringing anything for that here. Let's see. Can I see it's used in? It requires a reaction formula. That's what I need. Required inputs. Yeah, maybe you know, stuff like sulfuric acid. Maybe not the raw tungsten alloy. I haven't really seen that, but you know, overall, all of this is done with reactions from stuff that you get from moons in general. The situation is pretty stable, and of course, CCP opened up lots of very stable supply from highsec. So it's really going to depend on some real nullsec movements where regions are lost and taken over, repopulated, things like that, to actually bring that volatility back here, I think, for a lot of these. But we are going to continue with the metamaterials. Take a look at that. Photonic metamaterials up a little bit in price here after dipping decently low, currently selling for almost 18,000 ISK, buyers coming in at 17,300 ISK. So decent margin opening up here in the price of photonic metamaterials. Would I buy here personally? Nope, definitely not on that little upswing. Plasmonic metamaterials next, dipping back down to less than 20,000 ISK, really hovering at what, as you can tell here, around 20,000 ISK, around an average price, and the volatility is not really high enough to make lots of trades in. So 18,700 for sellers, 16,400 for the buyers. Basically, 16,400 is actually very low, actually. Let's see if I can, that's actually surprising. Really surprising. I'm amazed. It's gonna be pretty tricky. You can tell by the average price that it's the sellers that are winning out, but the lack of demand here. You could risk that. 16,500 for plasmonic metamaterials. Looking at this chart is a great buy price. So, alright, you know, if you do want that investment, plasmonic metamaterials buy order looks pretty interesting. Maybe I'm missing something with... Nope, I'm actually not filtering anything here. So, is it sellers in player-owned trade hubs that are going down? Nope, nope, not happening here as well. Very strange. Super large margin here. Definitely buying very low here for plasmonic metamaterials. Might be interesting. Non-linear metamaterials next, up to 25,000x. So here again, looking at this chart, back to an average price. Not much to say on the margin here, 25k, 25.3k, super narrow compared to the previous one. And then we have terahertz metamaterials that is also landing at 22,500x, a bit below average, and margin here 22,500, 21,600. Pretty narrow as well. Yeah, one opportunity then, okay, gotta be honest, plasmonic metamaterials, try to grab it for 16,500 ISK, and I do think you've got a good purchase. Then we have the other advanced moon materials. Here is fermionic condensate slowly stepping up towards their average price yet again. 92,400 for the sellers, 91,100 for the buyers. Again, decently narrow margin here, so not really an opportunity either way in my opinion. Ferrogel breaking back to the 45,000 ISK mark. You see that previously average prices, the closer we get to 14,000 ISK, the better it gets. 44,000 for the sellers, 43,000 for the buyers. Still a little bit early for me, but if we start to see buyers dip towards 40k, that is where I might actually find Ferrogel to be interesting. Fullerite's next, back on its average of 1100 ISK here. Not much to say. 1100 for the sellers, 1,057 for the buyers. That is right around average yet again. Hypersynaptic fibers, after dipping to 11,000 ISK almost here, early January, is working its way back up. So we're still below average, but we're nowhere near the buy opportunity anymore. Almost 13,000 for the sellers, 12,200 for the buyers. Nanotransmitters, same story, right? Nice little dip to 4.5k here, but then flat below average, went up to its average, back down a little bit. Yep, not much to say. Phenolic composites though, that is interesting, quite unexpected as well. Look at that first leg down here, then back up to 2,500, then 2,250, now 2,000 ISK, 1 year low point. This is, I think, where you gotta make your move, and that indicates that my phenolic composites here at 1,900 will have been purchased because, yeah, there's buyers have gone below that. So 2018 for the sellers, 1,853 for the buyers. I bought phenolic composites at 1,900 myself, and so here obviously 1 year low points and a nice buy opportunity to grab phenolic composites for less than 2,000 ISK. Looking at this entire chart, this is a nice opportunity which has been in the making, and I already have my investment ready. Pretty good, very good news. And after that, let's see, where was I? Phenolic composites. We still have ceramic fibers left that went back to an average about 500 ISK, a little bit above, a little bit below, and basically now back on the downtrend, but nowhere near 400 ISK for the buy opportunity, I think. So yeah, buy opportunity though, if you're looking for that one, phenolic composites. Pretty obvious in my opinion. And then we also had the plasmonic metamaterials because of those super low buyers at the moment. Next up, Take Two ships coming in at 28.35. Like that. Let's start here with the Aries that managed to get back to above 30 million and now is dipping back below that, but we do know that I think you could have bought these for less than 25 million not that long ago. 28 for the sellers, 27 for the buyers. Basically a bit more supply that squashed the margins there again. Basilisk went to 1 year low point, is now back to 250, so that opportunity is over. 247 for the sellers, 230 for the buyers. Back to the average price. Little trade that you could make, or do you have the patience for some Nosik action? and you want to keep your sub 200 basilisk in reserve for later trades, that's definitely possible as well. I mean, if you have those, at some point you're gonna make some ISK on them, and they also become sort of hedges against inflation, because it is in goods that will inflate along with inflation, of course. Then we get the Cerberus back down a little bit, but not at the 200 million mark, so below average right now. 233 for the sellers, 226 for the buyers. Maybe if they're good in the event, Cerberus might see a little bit of an uptick, but I don't think it's low enough to risk at the moment. The Crow stepping back to the 30 to 35 million range, basically where it's at. 29 for the buyers, 31 for the sellers. Pretty narrow margin yet again. The Guardian flat at 230, not much to say, seems to be the average price. 250 almost actually for the sellers, 215 for the buyers. It is true a high sell and a low buy order price at the moment, so quite a decent margin that's happening here, but on average the Guardian is basically trading at its normal price. The Heretic, that is a 1 year low point though, 60 million ISK. Does that mean that I bought one? No, I gave up. I gave up too soon. Damn, I would have picked one up, I think. 63 million for the sellers, but 59 million for the buyers. So they're trying to buy Heretics for less than 60 million ISK, which was my attempt as well. But I gave up just too soon. I think you're getting very close to being able to do that at this point. Volumes are down though substantially. So that's obviously a buy opportunity, even at 60 million, and sellers are at like 62 points. Even that is quite decent. I would want to grab a buy order, but if you want to be a bit short and just put in 61 million, for instance, you'll pick one up, I think. And if you want to be a little bit greedy, 59.99, and see if you get lucky. Next up, we've got the Hound back to its average of 30 million ISK. Sellers 27 for the buyers. That's around average. Ishtar also working its way back to 250, it's still below average, so 246 for the sellers, 230 for the buyers is definitely still pretty cheap for an Ishtar. And now you guys know, of course, that we do have the, whoops, where is it? No. Police skin. Damn, that looks good. That looks very, very good in my opinion. Yeah, absolutely nice little purchase there. And skin, it doesn't work very often on me, but here CCP definitely got me to buy some vanity items. Next up, the Manticore, a little bit under pressure, but staying above 30 million ISK, 31 for the sellers, 29 for the buyers. So that's basically this pattern here in lots of these frigates, is more supply coming in, driving the margins down closer to the buy prices. But we're nowhere near a breaking of the camel's back. If we would all of a sudden see buyers dip down to that 26, 27 million range, that's where you get a buy opportunity. That is not happening yet. We'd need even more supply for that. Munin back to 250 million. Yep, 254 for the sellers, 240 for the buyers. Bit below average, but not by too much. Nemesis though, that is where you see buy opportunities. Second one in not that long, in a couple of months here. Let's see where the buyers are at. 22 million for the buyers of Nemesis, 25 million for the sellers. That's another buy opportunity in my opinion. Do I have one? Yes, and I bought it for 24.5 million. So even that I think is still a great price, because you are buying Nemesis for less than 25 million on a nice little spike. You're gonna make ISK on that, but even now, now you can buy them for even less, I think. 23 million should definitely be possible. I could try to reduce my costs at this point, basically. So another nice buy opportunity, I think, for the Nemesis. And keep in mind here, 30 million, even before this next buy opportunity, I had an opportunity to actually sell my Nemesis at a little bit of profit as well. On Neros next, let's take a look at that. Still well below average, that's pretty obvious. 182 million for the sellers, 155 million for the buyers. That is obviously below average, but the problem here are of course the trade volumes, they're a bit low. Purifier flat above 30 million. Yeah, not much to say here unless the buyers are super low, but they're not. 27.3. Saber is actually next, back to its average 75 million. Yeah, not much to say. I tried to grab one and failed. Scimitar is back at its 1 year low point though. Buyers are as low as 191. Sellers are at 201 million ISK. That's another buy opportunity in my opinion. But again, you are dependent on some nullsec action for that sell opportunity to really materialize. Stiletto flat at 30 million. Not too much to say there. So yeah, take two ships, couple of buy opportunities that seem pretty nice, but you can see that I think you will need a little bit of patience for an actual sell opportunity with a more than average margin, I would say. Take three ships coming in at 34.45. Like that. And yep, as always, destroyer first. Here is the Confessor, back to 40 million ISK, basically pretty flat here. 41 for the sellers, 37 for the buyers, and volumes 14, 41, 22. Nothing out of line. Basically a normal price, I would say. Hecate actually breaking out to 50 million ISK at this point. 49 for the sellers, 45 for the buyers. Seems to be somehow very popular, so volumes are up a little bit as well. Look at that, that's a decent amount of supply. And volumes for buying, well, we've got a couple of days here that must have triggered this increased price. But overall, this is not looking like it's going to last very much. I do expect us to get back towards 40 million pretty soon. Then we've got the Jackdaw, also up in price, taking off from 40 to probably around 45 million ISK at this point. Yep, exactly, 45 for the sellers, 43 for the buyers. But what is quite noticeable, again here, just like with the Hecate, right, 49 million, but the volumes do come in. Last 24 hours, that is quite a bit. And now same with the Jackdaw, got quite a bit more than the Confessor. So I think that these increases in price here will be normalized by next week. Otherwise, there might be something else going on, some real meta changes, some fleets being prepared in these specific ships. And then of course, you know, obviously sell opportunities might last a little bit longer. And then this Vapel flat below 40 million ISK, obviously not so popular. 40 million for the sellers, 36 million for the buyers. And then you can see that the volumes are in line with that lower price. Why would you produce Vapels when you can sell Hecates and Jackdaws at that much better price? That's basically what's happening here. It does show that there is industrial potential in the Tech 3 ships at the moment, but that people are willing to wait for the best opportunities. Next up we have the cruisers. Here is the Legion, pretty flat above 160. Yeah, 167 for the sellers, 160 for the buyers. Also looking at the volumes here, not much to say, not that many available. Loki, flat and down to 200 million ISK, 205 for the sellers, 195 for the buyers. Again on the volumes here, nothing too crazy. Then we have the Proteus, very flat as well, below 180, selling for 170 and buyers at 157, a little bit above that. And again on the volumes, nothing crazy. And then the Tengu did drop down in price back to 175 on average, I saw. Yeah, 175 in Jita. Yep, and that's the price. 163 for the buyers. And here, except for these 81s here, so you do have a little bit more supply coming in when the price went down from 200 to 175. But after that, I think we'll calm down here as well. So the Tech 3 market, except for the Hecate jump and the Jackdaw jump, which I personally think, looking at what's already coming in, will not last very long, is pretty stable at an average price with no signs of either oversupply or complete undersupply either. Pretty strange but interesting situation in my opinion. And then for the extra product this week, we are going to look at the faction cruisers, 3810. And then I'll take a look at the ticker as well after that. So we get the ships, cruisers, faction cruisers. Start again with the pirate factions. People were interested in the Gila. So here is the Ashimu, 1 year low point, definitely pretty cheap. Again, I think all of this with the pirates being pretty low from time to time, showing that nullsec is able to get lots of these BPCs, and thus showing a quite stable nullsec here. So 59 million for the sellers, 55 million for the buyers, 1 year low point, very cheap Ashimu at the moment. Cinnabal also obviously below average, pretty flat at the tail end, not a 1 year low point, but selling for 150, buyers at 139. That is obviously a pretty cheap Cinnabal at the moment. For the Orthrus, we are talking just below average. It's basically hovering from above to below average at this point, selling now for 199 198 million. The buyers coming in at 185. It is a great chip in my opinion though, so worth the price, especially now that you're grabbing it for less than average. By a whisker, but it is still less than average. The Phantasm went as low as 90 million, 1 year low point not that long ago, now up towards 100 million, but it's still staying below that on the sellers. Buyers are staying below 90 million, also below average, very cheap Phantasms at the moment. Stradios, same story, 1 year low point, 161 for the sellers, 155 million for the buyers. That is also pretty damn cheap. And then the Gila, not yet a 1 year low point, but pretty obviously declining after its increased popularity, I think, with the Abyss. And now things are fully stabilizing. We're back at that 200 million range. So 196 for the sellers, 187 for the buyers. Also very cheap. And then we've got the Vigilant finally, that is still trading at 230 million. Is apparently a bit trickier to make lots of, and actually selling a little bit above average. The one anomaly in the pirate faction cruisers, which in general are at or very close to 1 year low point. Very, very affordable. Then we have the Navy factions. Let's take a look at that. Augurer Navy issue went for 75 million in January, now is back down a little bit, which indicates 63.5 million for the sellers, 56.5 million for the buyers. Quite a decent margin. That should indicate more LP coming in, thus Amar winning out a little bit. Let's take a quick look at the Caracal Navy issue next. Ooh, that's interesting. 1 year high point, 100 million ISK for the sellers, 85 million for the buyers. That's a nice little sell opportunity if you have them, and indicating that Caldari is losing because their LP is super expensive. So then we get Galente, Executor Navy issue. If you try to make the charts show something, we do see 1 year low points at 50 million, buyers in fact at 44 million. That is very cheap and very low, so that makes more sense when it comes to faction warfare. Galente doing well, lots of cheap LP. Caldari not so much, Caracal very expensive. So the Omen is at a above average price, but under pressure a little bit at the tail end here, selling for around 70 million. In fact, someone asked me to take a look at that, possibly for an exploration ship. So it's medium turrets. Okay, attributes, drones 50 cubic meters capacity. That is pretty good actually. And then on the fittings, we have 4. And with a high power slot. That's actually interesting because you can put probes in there. You get your 4 buffed up lasers. You still have drones as well. I think 5 medium drones, which is not optimal, but take something that's fast and that tracks well. And you're looking pretty good all around here. Mid slots 3, but yeah, low slot 7. So you can definitely put a nice armor tank in there. Yeah, very interesting. Definitely something that I'll look into when I find the time. But so this one above average. Then we get the Osprey Navy issue for the Caldari. You can clearly tell that this one is very expensive at the moment. 85 million for the sellers, 76 million for the buyers. Then the site is Minmatar. If you look at the entire chart, it's below average, but also at the tail end going up a little bit. So that still makes sense. The Stabber, same thing, right? Below average, 50 million, but up a little bit at the tail end. And then finally, the Vector should be cheap, and it is cheap. 1 year a low point, 52 million for the sellers, 48 million for the buyers. So finally, the cruisers. In all the others, frigates, very difficult to exactly tell a story there. Battleship, same thing, was all over the place. But here we obviously have a Galente Caldari story, with Galente being very cheap here on the cruiser markets, and then the Osprey and Caracal being at the very expensive phase. And then for Amar, Minmatar seems like they are in a bit of a more mixed or a more balanced situation. None of them really fully winning out, and at the tail end here apparently Amar is winning out a little bit more, cheapening their LP, and the Minmatar are up in tandem with that. So finally, that does make sense. Best category to take a look at in order, I think, to get the temperature of what's happening in faction warfare does seem to be the cruisers. And then I'll take a quick look at the ticker as well. We still have time. Yeah, we're at below 45 millions. We made good 45 minutes. We made good time here. So let's start here with the construction blocks. Bought for less than 10,000 ISK, currently selling for 12,800 ISK. That's not bad, definitely a trade that I could make. Consumer electronics, bought for less than 11,000 ISK, currently able to sell at 13,000 ISK. Could definitely take some profit there as well. That is looking good, but personally, I think especially for consumer electronics, we have a higher potential. Crystalline carbonite, bought for 146, selling for 170 almost. Could do it. I personally feel like it's way too early to actually do so. Helium isotopes, bought for 565, currently selling for 607, bars at 571, so I think we bought close to the bottom for now, but could still go either way. Haunt, bought for 25.2, selling for 27, so that's still, I need some patience there. Hydrogen isotopes, bought for 635. Yeah, keeps going down. Bought too early, very interesting. 585 now for the buyers, 625. Even the sellers are below my buy of hydrogen isotopes. So here we are continuing. Oof, that is going down to another 1 year low point. Very, very interesting situation actually. I wonder where all of these isotopes come from. Is it nullsec? Even more ice mining happening there when Rorquals can't grind down minerals anymore. They've driven that price down. They're maybe now working on the ice products. It's entirely possible, I think. So here you could do even better than me and now try to grab it well below 600 ISK for hydrogen isotopes, which of course is what's keeping the fuel prices in check. Manticore, bought for less than 28. That's looking okay, but we need a Manticore spike. Nemesis, bought for less than 25, so you get another buy opportunity right there. Nitrogen isotopes, bought for 660, selling for 689, still buying around that price is possible. So we'll need to keep an eye on the isotopes at some point. Yep, gotta remember that. So, good thing. Maybe I'll try to add the ticker a little bit more often. Then nuclear reactors, bought for less than 90k, now selling for 110. Buyers up to 102 as well. That's a nice little sell opportunity. Phenolic composites, bought for 1900. Still a possible trade, basically. And then we've got strontium. Ooh, that's nice. Bought for 2,300. A little bit of patience, and I could finally sell them for 3,200 ISK. That is nice. That is definitely a trade I could make. Maybe what I should do is make a new folder. New folder, and calling it. So I do want that to be even below ticker. So we'll call that Z Trades Made. And then if I manage to sell, let's say that I try to sell strontium for 3,200 ISK, I'll put that price here, and then I'll actually make them in here. Oops, and damn it, change label Z, because I want you below, but then we want the trades made, so I need to press the right key there. And yeah, I think I'll do that just to keep a repository here, and then maybe like once a month we'll take a look at that, or after I make a couple we'll take a look at that. But yeah, here definitely we could sell Stront, we could sell construction blocks, consumer electronics, and nuclear reactors. So we do have some potential profits to be made at this point. And that's going to be it for this Eve Talk then, guys. Thank you very much for watching, and as always, I'll see you next time.